Hey all, Dave here for the Frugal Sportsman. Today I'm going to be taking you on a journey to build a customizable, do-it-yourself, step-by-step Sportsman work and storage center. So stick around. Hey everyone, Dave here, and welcome to the Frugal Sportsman and my workshop. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to build a step-by-step project, which is a Sportsman center that's not only a storage area but a work center that's going to give you safe haven when you're doing all your outdoor projects. Okay, now that I've got my nail apron on, let me tell you a little bit about the background of this project. It started because I had a room down in the basement that was designated for my fishing and hunting equipment. But when my daughter and my grandson moved in and we had to remodel, that room became his bedroom. So we had to move all our stuff upstairs into the loft, into the corner, and it became quite a mess. It's really frustrating trying to find something that's been put in boxes when you're in a hurry to get things packed up. And so I decided that the best thing to do would build an organization spot for this, and so I came up with this design that I'm going to build through you with today. And let me assure you that as you look around here, I'm sure you see lots and lots of power tools, and that's because I was in construction for a number of years. But believe me, you don't really need any construction experience or these fancy power tools, miter saws, table saws to build this. I'm going to take you step by step in showing you what you do need. Basically, what you're going to need for this build is really simple. You're going to need a pencil, you're going to need a tape measure, you're going to need a circular saw. This one's just a cordless one. You're also going to need a Kreg pocket jig. Now, this is a pretty inexpensive tool. It's about $20. I'll put a link in the description below for you as well so you can follow along. But this is going to be an essential tool in putting this project together. And the other thing you're going to need is a 2-foot square. It'll really help your project get along if you have one. If you don't, we can work around it, so don't worry about it. The other thing is you're going to want something to work off of. Not everybody has horses or a table, but if you at all have opportunity to borrow them or even build your own, there's plenty of sites on YouTube where you can throw together a set of saw horses out of 2x4s. It's really going to help you because working up off of a garage floor and having a level space to work on and assembling this is really going to go a long way. And plus you can use the horses for other things. I work on my kayak all the time up on the table or up on the horses. It's so much easier than just working on the ground. So take your time and either buy a cheap set, build a cheap set, or borrow a set. It's going to be worth it in the long run. So I really encourage you to go ahead and do that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the project. The project itself is something I designed to fit my application. It can very easily fit most rooms as well, and so it's adaptable to many people's homes. Basically, it fits along one wall of a room. It has a work table, it has 2 upright cabinets, we'll call them modulars, and it has a center cabinet that's shorter. And the reason I made that one shorter is so that I could build an area to put my fishing rods on top of it. It has pull-out drawers, and it easily fastens to any wall system. So that's the project in itself. Now, let me just say this about that. If you have any room in your house that has a flat wall on it, you can certainly make this bigger or smaller to fit your needs. Once you learn the principles I'm about to show you, it should be pretty easy for you to duplicate it and change the size or dimensions however it fits your needs. The other thing is, don't let the drawers scare you. I'm going to show you how you can build some really nice drawers without hardware, without slides, without any extra materials, but just by creating them out of wood themselves. So let's go over some of the list of things you're going to need, and this is the wood that we're going to be starting off with right now. So basically what I have here is I have 8 sheets of plywood. Now this plywood, I'll have a link in the description below. I got this at Home Depot. This plywood actually is good one side, meaning it has a nice finish on one side. It can be stained or painted, and the other side maybe has a few knots, but it's reasonably priced compared to like birch plywood, which is very expensive, which is good both sides. It's probably about half to 60% less than the birch plywood, or 60% of the cost of the birch plywood, I should say. So you're saving yourself quite a bit of money there. You're going to need 8 sheets. Now, the sheets need to be ripped or cut lengthwise, and the easiest way to do that is when you're at Home Depot, is to just go ask an associate if they can cut these pieces lengthwise for you on their panel saw, and they will, and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It saves you a lot of time down the road, and to make sure that they're all the same, which is critical. The width of this plywood is 23 3/4 inches. Okay, you don't want to ask them to cut it in half, because if they do and they're off a 1/16, that means you're going to have one that's 1/8 of an inch off the other way, and it's going to really mess you up when you try to assemble things. So ask them to cut it at 23 3/4 inches. They'll cut one piece, you take that and put it in your cart, then the other piece they'll take off, put that on the bottom, and rip that one, and they should have a very thin sliver left of wood, which is scrap, and then all these will be exactly the same. Now I only have 6 pieces here, there's 2 more over on the other side of the shop. We'll pull them out later. The next thing you're going to need is and this is what we're starting off with, this may adjust later, and I will put the final count of what wood we need in the link below. So in the description below. So you're going to need 3 2x6 or 1x6s, 8 feet long. You're going to need 7 1x4s, 8 feet long, and 1 1x8, 8 feet long. And on top of that, you're going to need a 1/2 inch piece of plywood that's in decent shape, a 4x8 sheet. I have one over here we're going to utilize as well. And you can probably do this build for under $300. The other thing I want to talk about is the assembly, and I'm going to show you how we're going to be using these Craig screws in a minute. But I just want to share one thing, and that is, if you're not familiar with power tools, or even if you are, make sure you're wearing safety glasses and hearing protection. It's really important. It only takes a second to put them on, and it takes less than that to lose your eye or have a problem that way. So for the sake of $1 or $2 for a pair of safety glasses, make sure you're wearing them, and make sure you understand and read the instructions for your power tools, and you know how to use them, and you're comfortable using them. Okay, so with the safety discussion out of the way, let's move along, and I'm going to show you the next steps. Okay, let me talk to you a little bit about the design a little more. Now what I do is I have 4 modules, including a work desk, set up. The height I've made these is 7 foot. Now I happen to have a very tall cathedral ceiling in my house where I'm putting this, so it doesn't really matter for me. I could make them bigger, but I'm making them 7 foot because most houses have an 8-foot ceiling. And what I've done is I've designed this to make the build easier, but also give you plenty of storage. And we're going to be utilizing some totes to place in the modules, so that we can organize certain things like fishing reels or fly tying stuff or whatever it is. We can keep those easy to just pull out and get a hold of. There's also going to be a set of drawers in the modules, and those are going to be for smaller things that I access more often, like maybe a pair of binoculars or some camouflage makeup or whatever, things that I usually just grab on the go, with my GPS, things like that. And so those will be able to pull out and access. The things I don't use as often, I'll put in totes and put them on the modules as well. There's also going to be a section all the way on my left that I'm going to use to store some of my hunting coats, my jackets, pants, things like that. And so that hopefully will get things set up for me. My work table I'll have there where I can leave things set up, like if I'm building arrows or tying flies, I can leave those things set up and walk away from a while. I don't have to set up on a dining room table, tear down again. So it's really advantageous for me to go ahead with this build, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, if you like the content that we're sharing with you, I'd really encourage you to subscribe, because we want to be bringing more videos to you and we want you to be aware of them as soon as they come out. Now, the one thing I wanted to share with you too as well is, I mentioned I have a tall cathedral ceiling in my house, and I'm going to be putting my rods in that middle section. Now, I understand that unless you have a tall cathedral ceiling, that's not going to work for you. So what you could do is you could make all your module cabinets the same height at 7 foot, and just have a portable rod rack to keep your rods around the inside, and that would work for you as well. Okay, let me share with you a couple of tips and tricks that's really going to help this project run more smoothly for you. First off, take your time. Don't rush it. There's no reason to. If you feel like, oh, I got to get this built in a day or 2 days or whatever, take your time. You know, it'll go much smoother if you relax, enjoy the project. It's all part of the journey. The second thing I want to share with you is to measure twice and cut once. It's going to save you a ton of mistakes. Alright? Always double check your measurements before you cut. Number 3, when you're cutting, if you lay out from this side and you draw a line and you cut on that side of the line, then do the same thing on the other board. Make sure you cut on the same side of the line from where you laid out all the time. That's going to eliminate one board being shorter or longer than the other. It's so easy to just get confused with that. And so I encourage you to think about that. Okay, with that out of the way, let me clear off some of this wood and we'll get working on the plywood, which is going to be the first part of this build. Okay, the very first thing we're going to do now that we have this cleared off is we're going to work on cutting our plywood to length, to height. Okay, and I'm going to, don't worry about the dimensions, I'll have them listed all below in the description below. I'll tell them to you as I go, but you can always go down below and check them out in the description. Okay, if you notice here, there's one side here has some knots, some blemishes. This has a whole lot of them. So this is really going to be the side that we want to be hidden more than anything else. So this is the side we want to expose. Now, the one thing, whenever you're cutting with a circular saw, like this one, you want to make sure that the face that is the nicest, the one you want to, that you're going to be seeing, is facing down. If you're cutting with a table saw like this, all right, you want to make sure the face is up. That prevents any chipping that happens to be happening on the side that's not so good. So let's just take a second and flip this over, and then we'll get started. Okay. Now I'm using this table, like I said. What's great about a table or horses, it keeps it up about waist height, makes life easier to work. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a measurement of 7 foot. And I'm going to put a little mark here, 7 foot. And because this is factory cut, the edges I know will be square, so I don't have to check them. So 7 foot. Now we're going to take this 2 foot square. You need a straight edge of some kind. Could be a level, straight board, whatever it is you'd like. And all you're going to do is you're going to put this pencil mark on, connecting those two marks I put there. Now when we make this cut, we're going to make it on the scrap side. This is the side that we want to, we're going to be utilizing, and we want that perfectly at 7 foot. This we're going to actually be using later on as part of our build as well, so don't throw it away. Now let's make that cut. Got safety glasses on, here we go. Okay, now we just need to do that several more times. Remember too, if you're stacking your plywood like this to make your cut, make sure you have plenty of overhang down here. You don't want to be cutting through your boards as well on the other side. Okay? So that's one piece done. Let's move on to the others. Okay, now that I cut the 4 pieces that I needed for the number 1 and number 3 modules, the tall ones, the side pieces. Now I'm going to cut the 2 taller pieces, the side pieces, for the center module. Now, whatever height you want to make this, I'm going to make this height at 3 feet. Alright? So this is going to have a finished cabinet top, so that's going to be 3/4 of an inch approximately. So what I want to do is I want to subtract that from the 3-foot side, and I'm going to get 35 1/4, and that's what I'm going to mark. Now I'm marking from this end, so now I'm going to cut on this side of the line. And I'll show you what that means to cut on that side of the line right after I mark this. We want 35 1/4, 35 1/4. Again, I'm using a factory edge to mark this, so I know it's right. Double check. 35 1/4, 35 1/4. That's good. We'll draw our line. And now I'll show you what I mean about cutting on a certain side of the line. Okay, as you can see, we measured from this side down, and we drew our line right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut on the opposite side of the line. So what I want to do is when I put my saw here, I want to make sure that the blade is on this side of the line, and I want to just leave the line. Okay, if you zoom my finger here, I was cutting on this side as opposed to cutting on this side. If I cut on this side, I'm going to lose another 1/8 inch, so I want to cut on that side of the line, and the blade will go on that side, and I'll just leave the pencil mark. So let's go ahead and do that. You'll notice the cut I just did, you can just barely see the line there. That's what you want. That way you know that all your cut lengths are going to be exact to whatever it is you measured them to. Okay, I hope that made sense to you. Now we got to make another cut just like that one, so we'll have 2 equal sides. Okay, the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting our shelving. That's going to be acting as a support for not only the cabinet, but to carry our totes when we slide them in. And now the width of the plywood doesn't change. This is going to be 23 3/4 inches like all the others. But what we want to do at this point now, you have to decide how wide you want your modules as you're facing the wall. You can make these 4 foot, you can make these 3 foot. I'm going to make these 2 foot. So what I have to do now, I want my cabinets at 2 foot, outside to outside. So what I'm going to do is when I cut this shelving, I am going to subtract the tall sides. I'm going to subtract the thickness of those on each side. It's going to give me about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to subtract 1.5 inches from my 2 foot, and I'm going to have 22.5 inches. And that's what I'm going to cut these at, because they're all going to slide inside the cabinet, including the top shelf. And I'll show you why. When you want the top shelf to slide inside instead of putting it on top, because from the ends on the sides, when you look at the cabinet, you want a nice finished edge. Otherwise you're going to be seeing the end of the plywood. It's going to look not as nice as it could. So let's do this again. We want to make our cuts with the good side down. So I'll flip these over and get started and get right back to you. And we just repeat the process for however many shelves we need for that module. Now you'll be able to get 4 pieces that we're going to cut at a 1/8 foot piece, because they're all going to be 4 pieces at 22.5 inches. That's going to leave us a little piece left over that's 5.5 inches, and that's going to be perfect for part of our wall attachment piece. I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit. Now, because I measured from this side to here, I cut on that side of the line. So it's very important you remember which side of the line you're cutting up from. The rule of thumb to remember is always cut the opposite side of the line from the side you measured on. So if you measured on your left, you cut on your right. If you measured on your right, you cut on your left. That should keep things straight for you. Now this piece here I just cut off is going to be used for our upper piece and also for our fastening and stiffening piece for the back of our modules. If you remember initially when we cut the first 4 sheets, we had this wider piece. What we're going to do now is we're going to rip this piece in half. It doesn't have to be exact. We're pretty close to half, and again this is going to be used for the upper and midsection bracing pieces, and we're also going to use it to fasten the modules to the wall. So if you liked our content so far and this has been helpful to you, I'd really encourage you to take the time to subscribe and hit that like button. Also hit the notification bell so that you can be up to date on all the videos as soon as we put them out. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching again, and in our next video we're going to be finishing up our cuts and getting everything ready for assembly, so you're not going to want to miss it. Until then, thanks for watching and God bless.